The first thing Soren Vale said when he saw Mira Callow standing outside the sunlit hotel ballroom was not hello, not thank you, and not even her name. His voice was quiet, rough around the edges, and full of the kind of panic rich men paid expensive therapists to hide. He looked at her with a smile that did not reach his eyes and said, "Pretend to be my wife tonight." And Mira, who had spent years learning how to recognize pain behind polished manners, looked straight at the expensive suit, the trembling hand, the haunted eyes, and answered, "Only if you stop pretending you refine." For 1 second, the whole bright afternoon seemed to freeze around them. The hotel lobby was filled with golden light, crystal chandeliers, soft piano music, and people dressed like happiness was something they could afford. But between Soren and Mira, there was only silence, heavy and honest. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet people who save others without asking for anything back, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Hub. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that may need them today. Mira had not planned to be at the Winslow Grand Hotel that day. She worked as a floral designer for a small shop on the corner of Bay Street, the kind of place where lonely people bought apology roses and nervous people bought first-date lilies. That morning, her boss had sent her to deliver white orchids for a charity luncheon hosted by one of the city's wealthiest families, the Vales. Mira knew the name because everyone knew the name. They owned buildings, hospitals, galleries, and half the skyline. Soren Vale was their golden son, the man newspapers called brilliant, private, and impossible to impress. But when Mira saw him standing near the ballroom doors, he did not look brilliant or powerful. He looked like a man one breath away from breaking. He recognized her before she recognized him. 3 years earlier, on a rainy Tuesday, Soren had come into the flower shop after closing time. His mother had just passed away, and he had needed flowers for a funeral he had not been able to plan. He had stood in the doorway soaked through, unable to say what he wanted, and Mira had simply handed him a towel, made him tea, and arranged white tulips because he whispered that his mother loved quiet things. He had never forgotten that. Mira had never forgotten the way his hands shook when he signed the receipt. Now, in the middle of a bright day, surrounded by people waiting to celebrate generosity, Soren was asking her to become part of a lie. His father, Aldrich Vale, had announced Soren's engagement to a woman named Celeste without asking him. The engagement was a business arrangement wrapped in diamonds, meant to merge two powerful families and silence rumors that Soren had become unstable since his mother's death. Soren had tried to refuse, but his father had smiled in public and trapped him with expectation. The luncheon was supposed to be the official announcement. Cameras were waiting inside. Investors were waiting. Celeste was waiting. And Soren, desperate to escape a life being written for him, had seen Mira carrying orchids and made the wildest request of his life. Mira should have walked away. She had bills waiting at home, a younger brother in college, and no place in the cruel theater of wealthy families. But she saw something in Soren that reminded her of her own father before he disappeared into grief after her mother's death. She saw the exhausted bravery of someone who had spent too long saying he was fine because everyone around him needed him to be fine. So she set down the flowers, smoothed her simple blue dress, and stepped beside him. Not because she wanted his money, not because she believed in fairy tales, but because sometimes the kindest thing a stranger can do is stand next to someone when the room is waiting for them to fall. When they entered the ballroom together, conversations died one table at a time. Celeste stood near the stage in a silver dress, her smile stiffening. Aldrich Vale turned slowly, his face calm but his eyes sharp as broken glass. Soren's hand hovered near Mira's back, careful not to touch without permission, and that small kindness steadied her more than any promise could have. He announced that there would be no engagement because he was already married. The word struck the room like thunder. Mira felt every stare land on her skin, judging her dress, her shoes, her ordinary life. But she lifted her chin and did not move away. Aldrich laughed first, softly, dangerously. He asked his son how long he intended to embarrass the family. Soren answered that he had spent years protecting the family from embarrassment while losing himself piece by piece. His voice cracked on the last word, and Mira felt the truth beneath the lie. This was not about pretending to have a wife. It was about finally refusing to be owned. When Aldrich demanded proof, Mira did not panic. She simply took Soren's hand, looked at the room, and said that some vows were private because some love was not performed for applause. The ballroom went still again, and for the first time that day, Soren looked at her as if she had given him back air. But lies have shadows. After the luncheon collapsed into whispers, Soren pulled Mira into a quiet garden courtyard behind the hotel. Sunlight fell through orange trees. The city noise softened beyond the stone walls. He apologized again and again, saying he had no right to involve her. Mira listened, then told him the truth. She said she did not care about his father, Celeste, or the headlines. What she cared about was the way he flinched whenever someone asked if he was all right. She told him that pretending to be his wife for one day was easy, but watching him pretend he was not drowning was not something she would do. That was when Soren finally broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. He sat on a stone bench, covered his face with both hands, and cried like a man who had been waiting years for permission. He told Mira about his mother, about how she had been the only person who loved him without measuring his usefulness. He told her how, after her death, his father had turned grief into business strategy, pushing him harder, demanding perfection, calling sadness weakness. He told her he had not slept properly in months. He told her he sometimes drove to the old flower shop street just to remember the one night someone had made him tea without wanting anything from him. Mira sat beside him until the shaking stopped. She did not touch him right away. She waited until he looked at her, then placed her hand over his. She told him grief did not make him weak. She told him loneliness could make even a crowded ballroom feel like a locked room. And she told him that if he truly wanted to stop pretending, he had to begin with one honest thing before sunset. So Soren returned to the ballroom, not with a fake marriage certificate, not with another lie, but with Mira walking beside him like a witness to his courage. The charity guests were still there, feeding on scandal in polite silence. Aldrich stood near the stage, furious beneath his calm face. Soren stepped to the microphone. His voice shook, but he did not hide it. He admitted that Mira was not his wife. Gasps moved through the room. Celeste smiled like she had won. But then Soren continued. He said he had lied because he was afraid. Afraid of his father, afraid of disappointing everyone, afraid that if people saw how broken he felt, they would decide he was no longer worth respecting. The room changed. Not all at once, but slowly, like ice beginning to crack. He said the foundation money would no longer be used as a family image machine. It would go to grief counseling programs, mental health support, and emergency housing for people who had no powerful name to protect them. He said his mother had believed kindness meant nothing unless it cost you comfort. Then he looked at Mira, and everyone followed his gaze to the ordinary woman in the blue dress who had somehow become the bravest person in the room. Aldrich tried to stop him. He said Soren was emotional and unwell. But Celeste, who had been silent until then, surprised everyone by stepping away from Aldrich's side. She removed the engagement ring that had never truly belonged to her and placed it on the table. She said she would not marry a man being forced to disappear inside his own life. Her voice was cold, but there was dignity in it. For one strange moment, even the people who had come to watch a business alliance saw three trapped people choosing freedom in different ways. By evening, the story had already begun spreading online. Some called it a scandal. Some called it brave. Soren did not read any of it. He walked Mira outside as the golden day softened into peach-colored light. He offered to pay her for the trouble, but she refused. She said he could pay her by going home, eating real food, sleeping, and calling a therapist in the morning. For the first time, Soren laughed. It was small and broken, but real. He asked if she would let him see her again, not as a pretend wife, not as a rescue, but as himself. Mira looked at him for a long moment and said she would, but only if he kept telling the truth. Weeks passed. The headlines faded, but something deeper remained. Soren stepped down from 2 executive roles and began rebuilding the foundation in his mother's name. Mira returned to her flower shop, but her life did not return to what it had been. People came in asking for the woman in the blue dress. Some wanted flowers. Some wanted to tell her their own stories of pretending to be fine. She listened when she could. She learned that kindness, when witnessed, gives other people permission to be kind too. Soren came by every Thursday afternoon. Never with cameras. Never with grand gestures. Sometimes he brought lunch. Sometimes he helped carry buckets. Sometimes he sat quietly in the corner while Mira worked, learning the names of flowers and the language of ordinary peace. Their love did not happen like lightning. It happened like sunrise, slowly, gently, with both of them noticing one day that the room felt warmer when the other person entered. Months later, the rebuilt foundation opened its first community grief center in an old library near the river. On opening day, Soren stood before a small crowd, not as the perfect heir but as a man still healing. Mira stood near the back, holding a bouquet of white tulips. He spoke about his mother, about silence, about the danger of asking people to be strong when what they really need is a safe place to fall apart. Then he said that one afternoon, he had asked a woman to pretend to be his wife, and she had instead asked him to stop pretending he was fine. The crowd laughed softly, but many wiped their eyes. Near the end of the ceremony, Soren walked to Mira and took the bouquet from her hands. He did not kneel. He did not make a spectacle. He simply told her that she had met him inside a lie and led him toward the truth. He said he did not want her to pretend to be anything anymore. He wanted to spend his life becoming someone worthy of standing beside her honestly. Mira's eyes filled with tears, and she answered that love was not about finding someone perfect. It was about finding someone brave enough to heal. If this story touched your heart, please like the video, share it with someone who hides their pain behind a smile, and subscribe to Kindness Hub. Your comment might be the small light someone else needs today. Special request, comment "I choose kindness" if you believe one honest heart can change an entire life. And so, on a bright day that began with a desperate lie, 2 wounded people found something truer than any perfect story. Soren learned that being fine was not the same as being healed. Mira learned that ordinary kindness could echo in rooms built for power. And together, they proved that sometimes the person asked to pretend is the one who finally teaches everyone how to be real.